Welcome, and thank you for coming. We have got here Paul and his group from Washington, D.C. And in the sweep of history of this university, this particular project for our students and the faculty and staff brings not only excitement but a lot of promise. And that's why we are very glad and pleased. So with that, welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
And turn it over to you.
For anybody who is naturally has a very quiet voice, we do have microphones, and someone will bring it to you. If you just say, "Oh, I want to say something," we'll bring it around. Okay. So they're right here. Who's on my mic?
I'll be the runner.
Okay. How many people here were part of the meeting that we had in June? Okay, a lot of you. One of the things that we committed to you at that time is that we're going to have a very participatory process that begins now. Okay? And so we're not just going to talk at you. This is your time to share ideas and values with us to make sure that we can get it exactly right. And so you'll remember that one of the things that we talked about is that we're going to try to keep it simple. We want to do three things. Okay? That'll judge whether we've been successful. We want to get the asset right. We want to make sure that we acquire the capital advantageously, and we want to make sure that we operate to maximize the institutional interest in the asset. Okay? All of those things depend on something. Okay? That's what right, advantageously, and beneficially all, how do you answer with that question? Well, we need to develop criteria. This is where we're going to develop that criteria. Okay? So we're going to take you through a series of questions. We'll explain that. And all of those questions are all the line items that we have determined in our 20-some-odd years history of opportunities for this asset class to benefit and support the institution's mission and purpose. Okay? So this is our opportunity to listen to you guys. So we're going to, how many people were part of the pre-SAV session where we kind of explained the concept to you?
WebEx?
Yes, the WebEx. Okay, good. For those of you who weren't part of that, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. We got to get warmed up. Okay, we've got to get ourselves in the right frame of mind. And so we've got to remember that we are not looking backwards, we're looking forwards. And so we've got the words of a famous futurist. His name is John Shar. He passed a few years ago. If you look him up on the internet, the first thing that's going to pop up is this quote. I'll just read it directly. "The future is not the result of choices among alternate paths offered by the present, but rather a place that is created. Created first in mind and will, created next in activity. The future is not some place we are going to, but one we are creating." So I want everybody to feel a sense of self-determination. That's what this is all about. And so the institutional will to act, that's what we're all part of right now, is the direct result of a shared understanding of the institution's strategic imperatives and why they must be achieved. Okay? So we're also going to be making choices. And so Robert Fritz was very eloquent when he said, to activate the seeds of your creation, the way to activate the seeds of your creation is by making choices about the results you want to create. In other words, results, outcomes. When you make a choice, you activate vast human energies and resources which otherwise go untapped. All too often, people fail to focus their choices upon the results, and therefore their choices are ineffective. We don't want that. If you limit your choices only to what seems possible or reasonable, you disconnect yourself from what you truly want, and all that is left is compromise. So we're not going to use the word consensus building. This is decision support. We believe there is a single right answer, and one of the things to understand is that we are all just custodians of the values and mission and purpose of Jacksonville State University. That is what collectively we are honoring and responding to, okay? So that's what this process is all about. We are not going to limit our choices to only what seems possible or reasonable. Okay, we're going to be completely focused on what is ideal. Don't be afraid of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a gap analysis. Everybody has a slightly different version of that worksheet in front of them. The worksheet you have is for you to record what we go through. On the screen, we're going to go through it bit by bit, and it will be in a slightly different format, but you'll be able to follow it without much problem. And so, just as a refresher, the 0 to 10 is not bad to good, okay? So don't feel uncomfortable if we're talking about an outcome that's not really resonating with you. Not a problem. It's level of intensity that's appropriate within your mission and purpose. That's what we're trying to grade. So we have some rules, okay? The referee is on the screen for a reason. We don't want anybody violating the rules. And I'm going to select 10 of you to be my deputy referees to work with me to make sure that if anybody violates any of these rules, you are authorized to throw the flag. They're not dangerous. You can throw them directly at the person if you choose. Melissa is going to hand out the flags while I go over the rules. Okay? Everybody in this room for today is deputized as a trustee. What that means is that you're fully burdened by all the complexities and all the issues that a trustee has to be burdened by. Okay? So you can't sit there and go, I work for the rec department. All I care about is what's good for rec. And you can't say, you know, I work for transportation, I work for whatever. You are fully burdened, okay? The second thing, each of these different outcomes that we go through and grade, they're all independent. Don't try to see a pattern emerging. They're all independent. They all have their own unique relationship to what we call the SAV chapters that we're going to synthesize after this. So don't worry about it. Each one stands on its own. The other thing is, there may be certain outcomes that you think are important for the university to achieve. What we have to focus on is, do we want to burden this asset and its operation with achieving that outcome? Okay? So it has to be something we want to charge recreation and wellness with. The next thing is, and this is the most frequently violated rule, so be very careful about this one. We'll be talking about values and someone will go, well, the students will never go for that. Or the faculty won't like that. That's not what we're doing. We have a whole series of exercises where we're going to gauge the market. This is opening and closing gates. This is about determining what we believe is appropriate for the institution, not what we think the market is going to respond to. Now, we're going to be very progressive. We're going to listen to John Shar, and we're going to say it's about the future. If we haven't done something a particular way up to this point, irrelevant. We're going to do it the way it needs to be done to maximize the outcomes for the future. Okay? So, well, we've never done it that way before, I don't want to hear it. This is about the future. Now, the last one is also tough. We're not going to be encumbered by perceived affordability. If we start talking about a concept that goes well beyond what you've been thinking about before, and you go, oh my gosh, how many millions of dollars is that going to cost? Don't worry about it. We have several months ahead of us where we're going to try to mix and match and figure out the most cost-effective, most advantageous way to achieve these outcomes. If it's valuable, it doesn't become less valuable if it costs a couple of pennies more than we have in our pockets today. Don't worry about it. We need to know what ideal looks like, so we know how to maximize the value of what's achievable within our resource limitations. Okay? Are we all good? Ready to get started? Okay. I need 10 deputies. Who wants to volunteer to be a referee? Okay. she raised her hand so fast she's got to see her. Okay. This is a student-centered building, so we need at least one student to volunteer. Okay, we've got a student volunteer right here. Melissa, we got a student volunteer right up front. Okay, so how many people have flags? 4? Okay, there we go. All right, so we need 5 more real quickly. Okay, we got 2 right here.
Y'all realize this means our side is gonna be pelting your side.
So do we need some self-defense missiles on this side? Okay. Are we good? We have 1 more? 1 more. Okay. All right. So everybody that has a flag, read the rules 1 more time. You're responsible for helping me, because I'm going to be fully engaged. I might miss a violation or 2. So you gotta help me with that. Okay. So we're going to jump right into it. Now, every single slide that we go through is going to be pre-scored. There's going to be an X, which denotes the existing condition, and there's going to be an O, which is the future objective. Okay. Now, we're not going to arm wrestle anybody about that. We went and we did lots of research on what the institution stands for. We read all the mission statements. We looked at the strategic plan. We've had interviews. So we used our best judgment as to what we think that you guys will believe. But we're not going to try to convince you to share the same judgment we have. The important thing is for us to listen to you guys, okay? The most important thing is when you give us a reason why you want to move an X or an O, or even if you want to tell us that you agree with the X or the O, we need to know why. Understanding why is going to be the most important thing for us to grasp, okay? Now, there's a lot of people in the room. We usually do this with about half as many people. So what would be really beneficial if, I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Christy.
If Christy says something that you all agree with, a nice little murmur of, we agree with that, is going to be very useful for us so that we can understand the sentiment of the room, okay? Everybody has to participate. Nobody can sit there without at least saying, I agree or disagree or making a comment. Because otherwise, 2 or 3 vocal people will dominate the process, and then we're not going to be as confident as we want to be about the criteria when we're done. Okay? All right. You're ready, I can tell. Okay, so we're going to do these through sections. The first section is educational outcomes. So how can a recreation center help support the institution's aim of producing recreation outcomes? There are 5 subcategories, and let's start with the first one. If you can't see these well, you've got these same notes on your sheets of paper, so you can either follow off your paper or look at the screen, whichever seems to be most comfortable for you. Okay, so stress mitigation. A 0 is basically saying, you know what? The students are on their own. We're going to give them education. We'll give them the sources of stress. They can find their own sources to manage that stress on their own. The 10 says, you know what? We want the students to be successful, so we're going to provide the students with opportunities to self-manage their life, to balance their lives. So that's why you see accommodating a majority of peak demand for informal recreation activities, free weights, selectorized machines, cardio machines, indoor jogging, and group fitness. The goal here, or the thing to understand here, is to give students control in balancing their life. So it's breadth of those activities. If you look at the list of those activities, those are the things that students can decide. It's 10 to 12. I don't have class for 3 more hours. I'm going to go get de-stressed. I'm going to do it now. Okay, you want to give the students maximum control of their own life balancing. So that's a 10, and the 0 is the students can go run up and down the street, whatever, not the university's problem. So I've explained it. Who wants to start off with a projection on where it should be? We have said that we think the existing condition is about a 4, which in broad terms you can assume that that means that you're able to maybe accommodate 40% of the student demand for that kind of freedom. And we are saying that we believe, we're estimating or guessing that your value is to get to about 80%. Who wants to weigh in on where we've placed the X's in there? Let's start with you. Yes, sir.
So I have a question. When you say a percentage of like 40% to 80%, do you mean of the total population of students or the students that you kind of would project to use these facilities?
Whoever needs to use the facility for this reason. I'm stressed. I want to decompress right now.
But it's not a percentage. Your question was about a percentage, 40%.
No, I'm saying that if you achieve an 8,
Right.
that if everybody decides they want to do it at the same time, we can probably accommodate about 80% of those people. Thank you for clarifying. So who wants to say where you think you should be?
Where we should be or where we are?
Where you should be?
I agree with the 4 and the 8.
Yeah.
And why?
I believe that currently, our hours of operation and the activities that we have available are somewhat limited, regardless of what the reasons are for that. And I think that it is clearly evident that we want to have more hours of operation and more activities and better facilities. So I think a gap of 4 there is accurate, and I think 8 is a good representation of where we would like to be.
Okay. If I were to say, why not 7 or why not 9, why would you not go up or down?
I think 9 and 10 for our student body, our staffing, where we are, is too high, is not attainable. I
It
think any-
smells like a violation.
The idea being that it's open 24 hours a day.
Doesn't have to be
7 days
24
a
hours a
week.
day, because students sleep. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean 24 hours a day.
So that, when I see the 9 and the 10, in my mind, that's kind of where I see that. That's why I go back to the 8.
Okay, all right. We understand the reason, so thank you. Anybody want to comment on that? How many people feel pretty similar to that?
Yes.
Okay, almost everybody. Are there any dissenters? Yes,
I don't think that the 4, I don't think we're at a 4.
you're at higher or lower?
I think we're lower. I mean, if you are considering the way that reads, that off-campus health clubs and public municipal facilities and programs, now, I haven't lived in Jacksonville that long, but I've been through it enough to know that there doesn't appear to be a whole lot of off-campus health clubs and opportunities for students. I think the reality, and then when I have been in Stevenson Hall, I think the reality is that it's lower than a 4. But I do agree with the 8 being the goal to attain.
Okay. Does anybody think that we were too generous with a 4?
A little bit,
A little bit?
I think the whole reason we're in this discussion is because we're probably a little lower than that. But I also think that we ought to take advantage of this discussion to aspire to attend.
Okay. I see a couple of heads nodding at that. Do you want to,
I just say shoot for it, go for the best. I mean, at this juncture, we don't need to limit ourselves yet. So I think, if we can have the best rec center out there in Alabama or in the Southeast, I say go for it.
but this is just, we're going to get to some other questions that resonate a little bit more closely with that. But this is just for, say you're walking across campus and you meet a kid and you say, you look uncomfortable, what's up? Well, I just went to the rec center and the line was too long to get on the equipment I wanted, so I had to leave. And so I wasn't able to decompress my stress, okay? So if that makes you uncomfortable,
I would still say 10.
no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That would, you would be,
100% of the time for anybody that was stressed when that center was open to be able to go in there and use it. 100%.
comfortable.
Comfortable.
The people who were there was a lot of concurrence with 8. You just heard, what's your name? You just heard Cerise articulate a slightly different vision. How did that feel? And remember, in the context of Jacksonville State's mission and purpose, not your personal ideal, but you're thinking on behalf of the university. Yes.
I have a question. I think the 8 is pretty accurate. One reason that I don't say a 9 or a 10 is because I don't see anything that includes swimming facilities. I think that for a sky,
Don't assume swimming is not included.
Okay.
If lap swimming is the way to decompress, we would address that, because we're going to do a whole market check on how people want to decompress.
I know we have a pool here, but I'm not sure that it's state of the art.
Yes, sir.
What, this is just a question, my own information, to make me think about it. What percentage of our students are stressed? And,
We don't know yet.
if very few of them are stressed, or if a whole lot of them are stressed, make a difference in how much we want to take care
Well,
of.
the market analysis will take care of that, and we're going to make a recommendation how many facilities we need to meet that demand. This is just, regardless of how many students are stressed, how uncomfortable are you with students being stressed, and how much power do you want to give to them to control it? Yes, sir.
I like the 8, and the way we're talking about it, right? I mean, we need to provide the opportunities for them, but we're not going to be forcing them to go. And so it needs to be available for them, but it is not the end-all, be-all of what we're doing here. So that would be my objection to 10. I think 3 probably is a better representation of what we have currently.
Okay. Yes, sir, in the back.
Are we looking to fully replace like what we have, like Stevenson?
Don't worry about that yet.
But I'm
Maybe.
saying, okay, if we strive for the 8 and we have what we already have, is that kind of, working together? Or are we looking for the rec center to be?
You're looking for an overall campus condition. We haven't figured out whether we're going to add something to supplement Stevenson, completely replace Stevenson, expand Stevenson. We're going to figure that out in the next couple of months. We're just looking at the end result, however we get there. What do you want the result to be?
Okay, well, if not, then I say go for 10.
Yeah. Go 10.
I should take it into consideration, you have the Diamond Trail, you also have a track out at the Coliseum. I think those things should be given some consideration, so I'm probably at about an 8 or 9 based on, some availability of alternatives.
All right. We have a lot of these to get through. We have a big gap. What is the support for backing the X down to 3? Are people comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, that's most of the people. Let's back the X down to a 3, and now we can do half stops. Did any of the people who were comfortable with 8, were you at all persuaded to go a little bit higher? I didn't see anywhere near support for going to 10, but would there be support for going to an 8.5? Does that sound reasonable?
Let's go for 9.
9?
8.5.
8.5? Okay. 8.5 wins the day. So now, student professional development.
Sorry, Paul, I skipped one. I'll let you go.
Student leadership development, thank you. 20, 30 years ago, when I first started doing this, and I can't believe I can say that, and I still feel relatively youthful, but 20, 30 years ago, when I started with this, recreation was just fun and games. It wasn't a very sophisticated thing. It was, let's make sure that the kids have something fun to do, and there wasn't, at least broadly across the country, there really wasn't a lot of focus on the quality of the experience and them developing skills and life ways to manage your life. But we now know that recreation is a great opportunity to do that. And so through sport clubs, intramurals, the way you manage the student staff, there are opportunities to complement what goes on in the classroom by what goes on in the recreation center. So the zero, I'm sorry, is that, you know what, we're really not worried about that. We're focused on what goes on in the classroom. The 10 says, you know what, supporting the personal development of competitive sports, teamwork, dispute resolution, leadership, sense of responsibility with appropriate facilities and programs is really important. And so it impacts facilities, programs, the quality and type of staff that we put in the building. Okay, so those are the things that are at play. We said, we think right now you're at a 5. We think there's some programmatic intent that gets you a little bit above what your physical asset is, but you're very restricted in going too far. And we said, you know what, when we look at what Jacksonville State promises entering students, it says you're going to come out here as a whole human being, so we tilted towards the 10 end of the scale, but we stopped at 9. Reactions.
Should be a 10.
Should be a 10?
That's why we have a rec center right there. That's why we do it. You know, and to the university's credit, some of the other things we're doing is gonna move that 5 up, whether we do a rec center or not. Because we're putting in a new practice field for intramurals and for our band and stuff. I think there's, but this is motherhood and apple pie why you do a rec center. I think that would be our goal should be a 10.
I think so too.
Okay. That was pretty eloquent. Yeah.
I agree 100%. Reason being, I believe that student development and leadership is what drives a rec program. I really think that you're only as good as your students. Let's say you have 5 to 10 full-time staff, you may have 50 to 100 students. So you're relying heavily on your students, and I think developing them and getting them to where they want to be is, I think, should be a top priority.
That comment's going to hit our next category, so keep that in mind. This is really more for the participants than the student employees. Students, you're here represented, you hear people talking on your behalf. What do you guys think?
I definitely think we should shoot for a 10 as well. I think that recreational sports has the potential to grow here. And I think that if we shoot for a 10, it'll be much more inclusive and kind of encourage others that not be naturally, feel like they're natural leaders or naturally they put themselves out there, that if we give them the opportunity, it will kind of help bring them out of their shell and help their leadership development.
Okay, the other students are nodding their heads. You agree?
Murmur agreement, murmur agreement.
What's the general, there's a section over here that's a little bit quiet. What do you guys think?
I think that for student recruitment, that's huge. And I have a son who's a sophomore in college, and you know what, he was an athlete all through high school. And one of the things he was looking for, academics, you know, social scene, but also the sports and where he would be able to go when he was interested in a rec center that had a flourishing intramural activities available to him, where he could go and play pickup game basketball at any time. And he uses that as much as he uses, or more probably than he uses the library. So I think that's something that really can drive recruitment as well.
How many people in the room are disappointed that we put a 9 and would be more comfortable with a 10?
Why did you put 9?
We scored this a couple of weeks ago. We had a big internal discussion, and we just ended up at a 9.
I think that if you score everything at a 10,
No, that's a violation. We do have some. Each of these has a separate connection to a particular chapter of the final story we're going to put, and so they are separate. When you see a lot of high scores, it just means that you have a broad range of things that the institution wants to be excellent about. And there are lots of institutions that are like that. There also are a lot that have a much narrower view, that have quite a few things on the left-hand side, and they're perfectly comfortable with that. Anybody else have any other feelings? It looked like about 2/3 of the room acknowledged that they thought 10 was better than 9. Anybody who doesn't feel 10 is better than 9 want to speak to that?
I was just thinking that there's a certain percentage, I think it's a fair percentage of students that are never gonna feel comfortable with competitive sports. But not to say that they wouldn't be included in the activities at the rec center, but it may not be through, leadership or competitive sports. I think there's an opportunity to be creative with how we include those type of students. So that's why I would say more than 9.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm remembering now, thank you for asking me why we did 9. We were thinking about the range of other opportunities that the university would have through residence hall programs, other student clubs that would be not so much recreation related. So it's not the only vehicle that the university would have to rely on. And I think a broader platform is why we said 9 instead of 10. But that would, thank you for challenging me. All right, so final vote. How many people want 10? 9? Okay, the 9's overwhelmingly win. We'll go with 9. Do we need to address the 5? Are people comfortable with the 5 for the X?
I agree with Jim Brigham, and I think with this new field, we may see intramural sports have more participation.
But right
We'd
now
like
it's
to serve
about-
maybe, right now, I believe where it is.
Okay. Okay. Now this next one is similar, but it's student professional development. This is a little bit more focused on the students that we hire. If it's a 0, this is not what we hire students because we don't have to pay them benefits and they're a little less expensive and it helps the overall affordability of their operation. If it's a 10, you know what? Every hour that a student employee works in the rec center, we want to make sure they learn something too. And we're wanting to work hard, focusing on putting educational content into the jobs. We're going to work hard to make sure that we retain students in the program so they can have an opportunity to have progressive responsibility. And the way, there's a seriousness to the way we operate that will make it a developmental opportunity for the student employees. So we're pretty comfortable with the 5 of the X, and we did have quite a bit of internal conversation, but ended up with a 9 for the O. What do you guys think?
That's a 10 for me.
It's a 10?
I'm all about student involvement. No question.
Students, what do you think?
I personally think we should move it up to a 10, kind of relating back to the point I said about the leadership. But I think if we hire students in the rec center, that should be our main focus, is making sure that they come out of that employment with better leadership skills, and I think that should be one of our first priorities.
I agree, and I think a lot of the students that kind of want to go into that field, it'll help them kind of get first-hand experience, not only as a student worker, but maybe they kind of work up to maybe a manager position and things like that, specifically for this area.
Okay.
But I do like the point that you made about the prior 9, taking into considerations the other areas that we have for student employment on campus, and we do offer a lot of those. So I think that lends to the 9. I agree with Rob.
I think we offer a lot, but it's not quality. In terms of the student employment, I don't think there's development of the student. I don't think it's really preparing them to go out in the workforce and be productive. I think it's just a job, so to speak. So I'm leaning more towards the 10.
To build off of what you were saying, one of the reasons this category is on here is because of the scale and diversity of student employment opportunities in a rec center. Every university that we know of that has a contemporary recreation center, the recreation center is the largest student employer on campus. Before that, used to be the library. It pretty much becomes the rec center. There are marketing opportunities for anybody with a field related to physical education or kinesiology, personal training, event logistics, accounting. It just goes on and on and on. And when you're at a 10, you work very hard with the various academic departments to manufacture something as close to an internship as possible. So if you're concerned about the quality of student employment, nothing really competes with what a rec center can offer on college campus. Yes, sir.
So I kind of think maybe 5 is for the X maybe accurate, because I probably think we're a little bit lower than that due to the fact that I agree with the comment about how we have a lot of quantity here. I feel like a lot of the students are kind of like clerical staff, the aspect of, they just kind of sit at the front desk, they take the cards, when you go into the students call currently. So personally, I don't think it accommodates 50%.
Okay.
I love the discussion, and I appreciate Mr. Houston's comment about student workers here on the campus. We have a lot of them, and they're smart people, but I don't think we utilize them really. They just kind of sit at desks, and we don't. So there's not necessarily any real development of them. And I agree that the rec center really teaches them real life skills that they can literally go out the door. But I think we only should be a 10 if we have I just violated something like that.
No,
yeah.
so far so good.
Okay, so far so good. There needs to be that, as much as we can, that academic component attached to that outcome. So like you said, kinesiology, or we have 2 schools, one of science, one of health. It gives great opportunities for students. So I always like trying to get the best that we can. So I'd be between like a 9.5 and 10.
Okay. There have been some fairly eloquent comments suggesting higher than a 9. How many people support moving more towards the 10? It's about half.
As the go, right?
Pardon me?
As the go?
Yes.
The go, yes, I agree.
Okay. For those of you who don't want to see it going towards a 10, do any of you believe it should go below a 9? Okay. So it's in that 9, 10. Are we comfortable for the sake of moving on? Do we want to make a 9.5? Is anybody uncomfortable with that? Okay. Do we want to leave the X at 5, or do we want to bounce it to 4? 4? Okay. I've had 1 vote for 4.
We get a lot of jobs, though. Don't we have a lot of jobs to students? I mean, we have jobs.
But this is just in recreation.
Right.
I think a lot of people take into consideration different departments use student workers in different ways. And some have to get certifications, and it prepares them for a career. So I think 5 is pretty good.
Okay, yes.
I'm going to piggyback up what he said. Just from being around the rec center on a regular basis, we have a lot of kids that develop to be very effective for their future employers, and a lot of them develop life skills while they work for us. And especially kids that are part of our programs, our group fitness instructors, our intramural officials. Those kids probably do get more experience than the kids that work in the office or at the desk at the front ID booth. But I really believe, I think a 5 is accurate, because I think we have some students that they go higher than the 5, and I think some students may not receive as much and maybe fall slightly below a 5.
Okay. All right, so general comfort level with a 5. We'll move to the next one. Okay. Future alumni relationship development. What the heck does that mean? Well, gosh, back in the mid to early to mid 80s, Harvard University did a study, what makes a good donor? And they discovered 2 things. That however the student feels when they graduate, they're going to feel the rest of their life. They're either fair to Midland, really don't like, or really love the school that they graduate from. And the way they feel when they graduate tends to be the way they feel when they are in their prime earning years, and they've got a capacity to give. The other interesting thing is that the thing that makes them really feels strongly or negatively about the university has to do a lot more with the out-of-class experience than the in-class experience. And so from that, we know that there's a way that we can establish a relationship with current students so that they graduate and they're both predisposed and capable of being a donor when they mature into life. So should we use this whole socialization for the campus recreation center to create a stronger cohort of alumni that will become active donors or not? We put the O at 10, and maybe there's a little bias on our part. Anybody in public education needs to be very aware and concerned about alternate ways of funding the institution, because state support seems to be not on sure foot. And so you don't create an active, capable alumni base overnight. It takes lots of years. And so I guess if I should expose any kind of bias, our voting for the 10 is probably something you ought to think seriously about doubling down on that. The 2 on the X is you just don't have much capacity with what you're working with to give that extra special juice to the student users. So it's hard to make people happy when you don't have the resources. Anybody want to have a reaction to that? Yes, sir.
I agree with the 10. That's a good start towards a goal that we need to have. That goes way beyond just the rec center, but just that feeling that students need to have after they graduate.
Students, you were, obviously I was profiling you as people who are going to write big fat checks in 20 years. How do you feel about being targeted like that?
I agree with the 2. And I hate to say that I agree with the 2, but just knowing people that have graduated, they don't have that sense of attachment to our university that they should have, and the feeling of, we want to give back because they've done all this for me. A lot of them leave unsatisfied with things that have happened, or they felt that nothing's really been given back to them. And I think the 10 is right. I think the rec center is one thing that will show students that we're trying to make steps to get back to them, and that they will in the future want to give back more to one another.
Okay. Anybody have a different point of view? Is this an easy one? Easy one, okay. Put that in the book. So, every so often, there'll be a lot of conversation about wellness in society. We know it has a lot to do with what our healthcare costs are spiraling out of control. And what this basically says is, look, you know what? Institutionally, we have an obligation to allow our graduates to go off into the world knowing how to take good care of themselves and manage their wellness. And so you need skills, and you need habits. And so what this says is, you know what, we want to make sure that we support wellness education with appropriate facilities and staff and programs to make sure that people leave here with really understanding things about diet, exercise, sleep, emotional well-being, all those things. And maybe we're a little bit harsh, but again, with the amount of resources that are currently being allocated, that's not even, I know there are people here who care about it, but it's just not truly happening at the moment. So we picked 7. There's a degree of personal responsibility and emphasis that kept us from going to the 9 and 10 like we did on professional development and leadership development. But how do you guys feel about that? Yeah.
I'd like to see it go higher on that because, we are in Alabama and, we have some adverse health outcomes for our state. I think that, given an opportunity to improve that, we should. We see college students come to us that should be in better condition and they're already suffering health problems that a much older person, you would see in a much older person. So I'd like to see that higher.
I strongly agree. I'm a nurse, and I feel like if we don't teach them what they need to know at this point, to lay a foundation for later on in life, that we're missing an opportunity to be proactive in disease prevention. And we have, in my opinion, the resources here between the nursing program, kinesiology, physical education, well, kinesiology includes that, but exercise science and wellness, nutrition, dietetics, all of those academic areas that can bring a holistic response to this and really provide the students and faculty and staff things they need to know. We already do things like Wellness Wednesdays and just a few things like that that could possibly be done in conjunction with a goal for the rec center. But I feel a strong responsibility to improve the health, especially, as Julie said, in the area in which we live with the poor outcomes that we have.
How many people within the room were uncomfortable with being as low as a 7?
Personally, I would like to see that one move to 10 for the reasons they stated, because of these 5, that is a primary consideration to every student that comes through here, as well as faculty and staff.
I think it should be higher, but I think 0 is too low. Because they are places on this campus, whether it be athletics, Mason Hall, culinary, and stuff like that.
That's true, but we're thinking about only what's recreation doing. So we don't pick up points for those.
But
Yes.
we do offer some recreational opportunities. Should that at least warrant a 2? Or, I mean, if we didn't have any intramurals or any kind of rec facilities, it seems like that would be at 0. If there are some classes offered.
There are classes and personal trainer options and things like that are available through Stevenson now.
Okay.
We've got great racquetball courts.
I know during the summer, we actually went to their classes that offer like body blast, ab blast, yoga. It was like every day at 4:45, so we got off work at 4:30, so we were able to go.
Okay. Now, did you feel that you were getting a wellness education, or is it an opportunity to be active?
Opportunity to be active. Maybe like less education, more like just active on that part.
I was about to say what you were going to say. I don't think it's educational. I just think it's an opportunity to be active.
Right.
I don't think there's active education going on in those programs saying this is what you should do in the future to maintain a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, you have a fairly small staff. Do you have someone who's a wellness person?
No, and that's what I was going to say. Right now, Eric and myself, we have nobody delegated to wellness education. And as long as I've been around, I was a student employee here as well. We've never had anybody directly delegated towards wellness education. And I do believe that it needs to be a major component moving forward. But right now, I actually agree with the 0 because it's non-existent in our program.
Yeah, I mean, we saw no evidence of intentionality, and that's what we've got to correct. So back to the O. Does anybody think it's not as important as a 7? So 7, so it's at least a 7. How many people think it should be higher than a 7? About 2/3, maybe 80%. So most people want higher than a 7. How much higher? We have 1 vote for 10. That was you voting for 10. How high up should we go?
At least 9.
Well, because of the number of things that Chief Getty mentioned that go on outside of this, we mentioned how much do we burden the facility with doing all of these things, right?
Right.
And there are a lot of other things that go on campus. Now, getting that synergy amongst them certainly should be a goal, but I think 8 would be reasonable for me.
Right, because you've got student health has a role, residence hall program has a role, food service has a role. So it should be knitted together. So how many people feel good about an 8?
Can I make one more suggestion?
Yes.
When you look at stress mitigation, that's all on the student. Student comes in and takes the opportunity to reduce his or her stress. This is going to be on us to provide. So what if we put stress high and this low? It's almost like, hey, You had it, but we're not gonna know what kept you with anything past this. So to me, that's a little unethical.
At least inconsistent.
It's inconsistent.
So
Yeah, I
should we
think,
put it at the same, make it 8.5, that's what we
Well,
put stress on?
I'm trying to get a holistic picture of students. It's like, yeah, we had this great rec center, but we didn't really know what to do in there with. It's just like, the yoga class is there, but how's that gonna help me once I leave here? Is this, am I developing something that's gonna help me lifelong? You want me to come back and be an alumni, contribute money, can you help me like to live long enough to do that? And be healthy.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
I agree. I think this is one of, in looking at all the various categories on these pages, this seems to be one of the most important. And some of the others, like the one right before this, would kind of fall into place as a result of wellness, education, just developing a certain mindset and lifestyle for these students. And we have way too many that are extremely obese, and we have to develop a different culture.
No, he actually stayed in the line. I was listening.
Listen, every year I do the wellness thing. Obviously, we have to. And even though I go to the gym every morning, the nurse tells me I'm obese. So, there's a lot of us here, students and faculty.
All of the comments have been very consistent, and I find it very compelling to have the internal consistency of the two values. So, with your concurrence, I think we should call it an 8.5. Okay. Okay, these should go fast. Okay, we just went through the hard part. Now let's do the easy part. Enrollment management, student recruitment, and the competitive amenity. When a student's thinking about going here or somewhere else, to what extent should the rec center play a role in a student saying, I found my home? That's the first one. The second one is how well should it operate? So when the student becomes part of the culture, to what extent should the rec center contribute to one of the reasons why they want to stay here at home? So let's do the first one. So imagine the campus tour experience. Okay, right now, particularly in the state of Alabama with your in-state context, I think we've actually been generous with it too.
It's not on the tour right now.
It's not on the tour.
Well, that's the answer there.
Now, when we were here in June, the one part of the discussion we had was what should be the big reason why we're making this investment, and what emerged as the big reason was market repositioning, which is basically this. So I think we already had a conversation about this. I think it's a 10. Does anybody want to revisit that? Yes.
I disagree, because there are some students, they could care less about the recreation facilities. They're here for the music program.
That's true. That people will come here for other reasons.
Right.
Doesn't, well, okay, what were you gonna say?
I don't think that, it is a valid point, but I don't think that just because there's true that it should negate the fact that, we still need something to draw people here. And as an RA, we need something to even keep students here on weekends, because it's hard enough to get that done. So I think, the rec center would be something that's vital to student life, period, and potential students. So I think it should definitely be.
Yeah. What's your name again? Kim? Kim actually made a compelling point. How does everybody want to react to her sentiment?
Let me just say, I'm all for, a great rec center because I use the recreation facilities.
Yeah,
But
no, I
I'm
understand,
not
but it doesn't necessarily have to be eye candy.
Right, and I'm not sure that, there's a certain percentage of students who, they could care less about that, and that's not going to affect their decision. They have a better rec center than this.
And if we're looking at this as the rec center's portion carrying the burden on student recruitment, there are a lot of other things that are going into that, because there's inconsistencies in the way housing is presented. We charge a technology fee, and Wi-Fi and internet is questionable in some locations, so this is going to play a factor, but there are other things too.
Okay.
Yep.
thing that I just want to keep in mind as well, there is a large portion of our students who are commuters. And there are a lot of them that just come to school and go home, they don't take part in anything.
I would like to address that. I was a commuter student and my daughter was a commuter student. But we were not very involved because that was the culture at the time we were in school. Something like this would change that and make us be more involved and hang around more.
Because you might have had a large break in time in between classes. There wasn't really, and you lived too far away to really make the.
And I don't think that it's exclusive to the people who come, I mean, it excludes the people who came here for the nursing program, who came for the music program. I think this is a very inclusive, all students kind of thing, not just your recreation majors or your athletes. It's gonna be, it's not only gonna be a rock climbing place or a weightlifting place, it's gonna be a hangout, communal place that's gonna speak to all of them.
And
A lot of people.
you know,
Most
we have a
of them.
beautiful campus, and we're touring it all day, every day, all the time. I think we actually had upwards in like 13,000 people tour our campus. So people love this campus. But what's not seen when you're touring this campus, and then our competitors, Mr. UAB is sitting right there at that table. They're doing their college tours, and whether they live on campus or not, the resident life, the dormitory will sell, and your rec social center will sell. We're not selling a football stadium, which that only literally appeals to some people. And when we do a tour, we take them past Meehan Hall. Some are impressed with it, some aren't. They're not into football. It just goes over their
But then they get
head.
into a normal building.
And, you know,
that's
so,
tied- that's a
but if you're a
entirely different
music
experience.
student and you're coming and you're looking at the tour, and I'm interested in music, and this is why I want to come to JSU, but you also want to see, other than my studio where I'm practicing my instrument, where can I connect with other music students? Where can I connect with my boyfriend who happens to be a biology student? Where can we hang out? And in terms of the wow factor, I'm telling you guys, it makes all the difference in the world. You have one chance to make a good first impression, just one. Just remember that. That's one chance to make a good first impression. That's why I'll choose 10 on almost everything, but, so I just think it's.
Yeah.
I think that whatever we put up is gonna be a wow factor. It's either gonna be, wow, this is awesome, or wow, I just thought the nature of being new on campus, right? Because, you know, the only new thing since I've been here, was stadium towers, was the dorm, but in particular the expansion of that. It'd be nice, if the wow factor was something other than just the stadium.
I'd like to hear from the students about this.
I was about to ask the same question. Students?
Well, I definitely agree that it should be a 10, but only kind of piggybacking what everyone else is saying, as long as we sell it to something more than just this is where you work out, this is where you go to de-stress, that making it, because I know this is what we mentioned on the phone a lot, me and my executive officers, there's really no place for our students to hang out. There's the T&B food court, but who wants to hang out by the Chick-fil-A, you know what I'm saying? So like, if we sell this as multi-purpose, kind of like, hey, we got a smoothie bar, like come show between classes or something like that. That way it identifies with our commuter students that don't want to sit in the car between classes and our students that live on campus. I feel like that is what a 10 is here.
So it's got to be a building that's consistent with the story.
I agree with that. And I've been on the orientation staff and a tour guide in my time here, and it's really sad when you can be standing literally 100 yards from the rec center and people having to stop and ask you where it is. When they have to stop and say, where's your rec center? You're just like, well, you just passed it actually, like driving over here. And when I took tours of colleges, this was the only college where I came to and I could not tell you the rec center was when I came on campus.
One last comment?
Yeah, I may get a flag. We only get to design and build this one time.
That's not a flag.
That's not a flag. If we do it with a wow factor, all these other things that we talked about, those can fall into place later, but we build the building one time. If it has that wow factor, it's not taking away from any other thing that we have. It's just like she said, it gets their attention. They're like, wow, we have this great thing at JSU, and it's a static thing. Everything else can kind of move towards the 10 later on, but the building, we can't wow it up once it's in there.
The quality of discussion so far this morning has been outstanding. Anybody want to advocate strongly for moving it back from a 10?
No.
Okay. All right. So we'll leave it. And I know we're generous out of 2.
Very generous, thank you.
We want to pop it back down to 1.
In terms of a rec center,
It's
Yeah.
really
selling it, yeah, we don't sell the rec center.
Okay.
We have
Take it down. Let's take it down. Okay. Student experience. Now, this is about what happens in there. So the comment that the young man in the back, who is an RA, made, this is where your comment now becomes more relevant. Some of the student comments about more things to do, part of the student experience. That's where those comments really were to this. It's, you know, the having a building that looks nice in the summer when there's not much going on is a lot easier than a building that feels right in October, in late February, early March, when you really need it. We think recruitment and retention and a sense of place is really important. So we were not able to move the O down from 10 because we think that's what this is all about. And I think one of the things that's happened in the first couple of weeks of us being engaged is we got a very consistent message that it can't be a place where you're only comfortable when you're sweating. It's got to have much broader appeal than that. And so our interpretation of that is really all about the student experience, and this should be something that appeals to the broadest possible percentage of the population. So yes.
Sort of, it may be a general comment, but I've been here since 1968, and the reputation we have, that of a suitcase college. Students came in, went to class, opened the suitcase up, got the stuff out, Friday they threw it back in the suitcase and went home. And we got to change that whole image of being to accommodate the students if we want them to stay here and to recruit them to start with. Having good programs is one thing, but a lot of good programs. And if you're going to get them to come to your program, you got to have something else.
Okay. So your comment is in support of this? Where we are? Okay. We're going to have to pick up the pace a little bit. Is anybody uncomfortable with this? We think that the fact that you actually have a facility, the weight room is probably the most efficient space on how many students can you accommodate. So you can, you know, I think the 4 is probably okay. The building does actually operate a bit better than it looks. So I think that the 10 and the 4 are okay. Campus community. I think these will actually be fairly easy, so we'll try to do these a little bit quicker. General gathering place. And the way I like to think about this is if you're bored in your room at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 7 o'clock, whatever, and you go, I just want to go someplace where I know something's happening. Should the rec center be that place? If you believe the rec center should be that place, you can't go below a 7. You're somewhere in the 7, 8, or 9, or 10. If you believe it should be the place, the primary place, then you might want to think about being somewhere in the 8, 9, or 10. We may have been a little bit generous to the 4.
Yep.
Particularly since we did these scores in our internal meeting, we've interacted with quite a bit more people and conversations, and so I'm not sure the 4 that you're really quite at a 4 yet. So maybe that's a 3.
I
But
personally think it should be moving on to an area too, because the place to hang out right now is in the right beside the place to go to just to have a sense of gathering.
That's, having been on a lot of college campuses, it's the single you know, the rec center's not awesome, but my gosh, there's no place for them to hang out.
Right.
You know, the lack of a union was just shocking to me. Particularly as many commuter students we have, and just during, and this being a small town, that we desperately lack space for the students to gather, or just to hang out.
I definitely think that it should be higher than an 8. I've been a commuter the whole time that I've been at college, and there's nothing more frustrating than having to have my laptop open in the library parking lot because it was past 4:30 and I needed to meet with a group, and I needed Wi-Fi. So I definitely think that with the high population of commuters that we need to have some sort of student commons building. At 4:30 on Friday, Chick-fil-A's closed, gates down, there's, 6 tables to sit at, or the library's closed. We need a place that can be more accommodating for students to have that sense of unity and connection to campus.
I agree, and that's gonna be the only place. This is
Right.
the only place. So I think that this
Well,
is
you,
the iron.
you walked really close to a line right there. You said that, this will be the only place. That's only the case if the university says we're not ever gonna build another building. That could be more union. So I think we ought to be careful there. Yes.
I just think the more they hang out here and they have more to do, then the less will actually be somewhere dangerous. This will be a safe place, so I would like to see it like a 9 more.
I anticipated this was gonna move up because we had some conversations. It feels more like a 9 and 10.
Yeah, I would push for 10. It's so critical.
How many people, what's your face telling me? I can't read it.
Well, the reason I'm kind of iffy about doing it 10 is even though I am a huge advocate to have kind of like a student commons building, I don't think that needs to be the biggest thing, because I think that with our administration, they're wanting to go forward so fast. I believe that at some point in time, they're going to pursue a place where the main focus is student commons. So I think that it should be a 9, maybe a 9.5.
Yeah, not that my voice should matter, but I tend to agree with you. I think going to a 10 constrains as opposed to reinforces the potential future.
Well, I'm comfortable with the 9.
Me too.
Everybody likes it. Okay.
Are we comfortable with the X, Paul? I'm sorry, that,
Yeah.
the X is 2?
The exit 2, or is that?
Park benches are about as good as it gets.
All right, faculty and staff student interaction. This is, if there's anything that is different from campus to campus, this is the one that is different from campus to campus. Some cultures, we want to be all one big family, and other cultures, it's like, the students are like, we really want to relax and not be with the faculty, and some places the faculty are like, we don't really want to be with the students, but sometimes it's like we love each other and we want to spend more time with each other. What is this campus about? We saw a big opportunity here, and even in the context of hearing very clearly, particularly from the students, we want this to just be our building. When we got to the bottom of that, it was more like we want to be able to have our space. We don't want to be overcrowded. But I didn't really hear, we don't want to be around the adults on campus. What's the sense here? One big happy community where everybody has their own space?
I'm gonna flag myself by saying, we currently do it that way, and so we're comfortable in that culture, I think, for the most part.
With one.
Being together.
Yeah.
Y'all don't really mind us. They pretty much ignore us.
I'm not sure
And
about that.
we like that.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think back to when I was in college, I would not want to exercise with my grandfather. And I think that when I exercise at my pace, and it's not the same pace as most of the young folks. And I think that while that's not necessarily a disqualifier, I do think that there's when you get into some of these exercise areas and stuff like that, some of the stuff can get a little bit too competitive for that kind of a matchup. I do believe that this should be a student-focused facility, and if it's available for staff, if it's available for faculty, I think that it ought to be only because it fully meets the needs of the students. And then beyond that, because you know what, I can go to 24-hour and exercise if I want, but these students can't. So I just think that this needs to be focused on the students. And then, you know what, if they think it's okay for geezers like myself to come in there and exercise, I'm happy with that. But I don't think that ought to be my choice. That ought to be the student's choice.
I would respectfully disagree with that. Respectfully. And I've been on different campuses, and when you you've gotta have space, that's important. And I think you have to talk about the culture of the rec center. So it's kind of like on Planet Fitness, no running allowed, so it doesn't really matter for young people, old people, you just get, going in and doing your thing. And I've seen it where there's an opportunity, and I like to engage with students. They like to engage with me. I like to be in the same space they are, working out with them. They motivate me. They might laugh that I can't do it as fast as them. But it builds community. It builds relationships. I think the key, though, is you got to make sure there's space. So, if you have a heavyweight room, so, so you kind of have to build it so that somebody's doing heavy weights, doesn't have to be around somebody's sitting around doing smoothies or whatever the case may be. So there needs to be space there. I do think it reflects the community and this campus. If we set up a building and say we're separate and distinct, then we're no longer really the friendliest campus anymore. We kind of isolated ourselves from our students. And I don't think that's what these buildings are about. They're about building community. The last thing I'll say is, a lot of our students are over 50 and 40 and look like old geezers, but they're students. So, Jocelyn might be a young girl at 20 years old. There are a lot of students that look like me, act like me, work out like me. So, there really wouldn't be any kind of separation of age or demographic because it's very blended, both in the staff and faculty and the students. So I respectfully disagree with that.
No, your speech just took it right out of my mouth. I was just gonna say, I have classes with some people who are 50, so I don't think you'll be able to differentiate anyway if you're beside a professor or if you're beside a peer. So I don't think it'll pose a problem with staff and students being together.
Yes, sir.
Speaking about another university, when I was at the University of Alabama working on a doctorate there, rec center was open to everyone. There were no restriction on hours. And that was actually one of the first things I was very impressed with was the community they built between faculty and students, because it was packed with both all the time.
So we're at a 9. Is that what we started? We started at 9?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a vote. How many people think 9's too high? How many think that 9's just right? I think the 9's just right carries. Okay. Alcohol-free social opportunity. You might think, who wouldn't be at a 10? We did have a client that said, we don't really care about it. It's been the culture here forever. This is an alcohol-infused campus, and we're not going to kid ourselves to think that the rec center or the student center is going to make a lick of difference. We're not even going to try to compete for their attention. And they were way down. Most of our clients, however, are somewhere in the 7, 8, or 9. And we put it at a 10 because of things that other people have talked about. It's a small town. It seems like a responsibility to give people something to do that doesn't force them to do something that isn't necessarily the healthiest lifestyle choice. But what do you guys think?
I'm curious how the students feel about that.
Okay, so here's my take on it. I understand kind of those perspectives of, if you give them something to do, a lot of people are going to take advantage of that. But I also think that if you seek to, you shall find. And I think that carries a lot for freshmen because that's kind of who we kind of look for more so in retention and things like that. You know, we don't really want them to go and do those bad things, so we kind of want to offer these things. But I also think you should offer, because then you could say, well, you know, we offer these programs, you know, that's kind of your choice to take or leave.
So you're saying, yes, but 10's too high? Or are you
Yes.
saying, okay, so where would you place the 10?
Probably at least 8.5 to 9.
Okay.
I agree with higher than that. I sort of agree with the 10. I see it from both sides like Ranger does, because we definitely need to have alternatives on campus where people don't have to go to parties and don't have to go to bars. But at the same time, we have one bar, and so it's not really that big of an issue here.
Okay. I work in the council. So I see students, GED students that, you know, get into trouble because of alcohol or drugs, okay? Now, these things have potential lifelong consequences. You know, it can affect them in monetarily, it can affect them in a program of study, in pre-professional, like if they're going for certifications and things like that. It's really an important thing that we address that. You know, if we intend for our students to graduate here and go out and attain careers, because these are barriers for them. You know, and they don't realize it, they don't necessarily think about that when they're out, you know, going to the bar and deciding to drive them home, or, you know, or those kind of things, or they have marijuana in their, you know, dorm room or whatever. So I personally feel that we should strive to offer the more alcohol-free programming and events.
Okay. I see a lot of heads nodding.
I agree.
Is there anybody who, other than the one young lady who was very pragmatic, is there anybody who believes that we should be less than a 10? I guess it's a 10. Okay. How about alumni and community relations? We scored these low because you don't have a robust alumni or community that really surrounds the campus. It's not like one of our first rec centers ever, DePaul University in Chicago. You know, there were 100,000 alumni living in the city, and the community was integrated in the campus. So this was a huge town ground management opportunity for them. So, yeah.
There are more than you think. In 2 counties, you know, we have about 13,000 alumni.
Okay.
And it's right around us. So I think it'd be a mistake to keep that low.
Okay. So if you have 13,000 alums, that means you've got twice as many alums as you have students within a drive time. Do you guys feel that it's important to include them? They're part of the community, part of the greater Jacksonville State community, or not that important? I see lots of body language, but I need some verbalization.
Can I ask a question? This
Yeah.
may be breaking the rules and you can throw something at me. But where are we kind of currently? We have a number of alums that come in and use Stevenson Center.
We do have some, yes.
So you could see that continuing and maybe growing?
Right. What I'm confused about is earlier we had how important it was for us to engage our alumni, and we ranked it between 8 and a 10. And now we go to alumni and community relations, and it goes to a 0 on the scale. So I don't know why that one wouldn't be, because I feel like it's similar to the other one that we scale high.
And we were probably thinking lack of opportunity as opposed to lack of importance.
Okay.
So if it's, so if the opportunity's there, we would have internally scored it different.
Okay.
I think here again, the focus has to be on the students first, and then if there's excess capacity, this kind of thing. But, you know, I mean, is it gonna detract from the students to have a bunch of alumni in there? I think we have to weigh that.
No need to. As a matter of fact, at Cleveland State, where Sean used to work, there was a lot of interaction between alums and students that led to internships and job opportunities and mentoring opportunities.
Yeah, no,
I mean, it's,
I'm all for that.
so I don't, you know, the size in the building, right, is a separate thing. We can manage that. It's who do you want the community of users to be and why? Yes.
So, I'm kind of torn, because I'm going to be an alumni, people, you know. So, I feel like I've worked very hard for this rec center. And I would love to come back and use the rec center. So I do think that we should give alumni an option. I would not want to use it for free, because the students are going to be paying $150 for everything. So I think we should either offer like an annual rate for alumni, so whenever they come in town for a football game, basketball game, whatever, that they have the option to have a pass or something like that, or charge per thing. But I think one of the things I'm very eerie about is the community. You know, because I know that we talked a lot about that on our phone conversation, but I don't think students want to open up the rec center to the general Jacksonville and a state community, because we want something that is ours. However, I feel like alumni is a part of our family. So I don't feel like students would be as opposed to alumni as they would be the general community.
So it sounds like you're saying move the O to a 5 with a strong note that it's alumni, not necessarily community. Okay. That seemed like it struck a chord with lots of people. Okay. Okay. Quality of life system integration. What this is about is there are a lot of things, we've mentioned it a couple of times, that there are things that work more as a portfolio as opposed to being siloed. Wellness, intramurals works well with housing, wellness works well with dining. You know, so to what extent should we programmatically and physically knit the campus a little bit more together with respect to a coherent quality of life system? And so, given that it's a relatively small school, it seems like there'd be a lot of benefit to us to reinforce the community by moving it into a more integrated fashion rather than less. We didn't go crazy with a 10, but 8 seemed like the right way to go. This will influence final siting decisions. It'll influence operationally, when we get to the point of writing the business plan, how integrated beyond just the walls of the rec center, the operation views its responsibilities.
I could almost go up higher on 9, simply because the impact that the building's going to have on campus. Whatever we do, it will, change our spatial relations, how we use the space on campus. Meehan Tower is great. It's also on the very edge of campus, and faces out from campus, which makes a nice front door in some ways. But those students come out and they don't see campus. That, again, it gets back to this idea of gathering space. And the reality is that we don't put up buildings very often here, for a lot of shortage. So that the land use, the master plan, that these are really important to me because of the long-term impact that it's going to have on how our students and faculty use the campus.
Any other, you're shaking your head. Anybody think that it should be lower than an 8, that an 8's too high? I saw a lot of body language concurring with his statements that suggested that maybe there's comfort levels at a 9. Okay. All right, we'll move it to 9.
Paul, sorry, Dr. Roy gave me a 5-minute.
Okay, so we're going to do these like really fast.
Lightning.
All right, and this is always the fastest round because it's for the simple reason that most people are not well equipped for dealing with some of these issues, but we'll get to them. The first one is probably the one that you guys will feel relevant about, and this is revenue generation. So the 0 is there's a basic student fee, basic membership fee. You go in, and there's not a lot of other things to buy a la carte. The 10 is in a more expansive a la carte menu. The more expansive a la carte menu does two things. It's under revenue generation because you can obviously merchandise it and generate more revenue, take some pressure off the student fee. But it also there's also an equity issue to consider as you move up and down, which is not every student comes here with the same financial capability. So the more you go towards the menu, the more pressure you can take off the scale of the student fee, so it makes the basic student fee more accessible. But if too many things are in the menu, you're now creating transactional barriers for students to participate in everything you want to provide for the whole campus. So with that explanation, comfort level, understanding that more opportunities for transaction can generate more revenue, but the more we put transactions as the door that you have to go through before you can participate in something, the more you start to have some differentiation among your students based on financial capacity. And as you think about this, think about all the values that all the things that you wanted the whole campus to experience. And just to move things along, after the conversation that I heard, I think the O's got to move much more towards the 5.
I feel much more comfortable with that. I mean, I think I hate nickel and diming our students. And that a lot of them are lucky they've come up and borrowed the money to be here. I hope I don't get flagged over this. I don't want to keep them from being able to do something like rent a bike, kayak, whatever it is that ends up being offered, because they don't have the extra $10.
Right. And it may be $10 instead of $50, but I get your point.
I mean, priced right, that makes sense, but you know, if it was $50, then that would preclude a whole lot of our students. I don't know.
Prices do 3 things. One, they drive behavior. People are a little bit more responsible for things they pay for.
Sure.
2, sometimes you just need to recover the cost. And 3, there's an entrepreneurial opportunity to just generate money. And so what I think by moving towards 5, our pricing strategy is leaning more in the first 2 categories than the third.
I just think it's real important, I agree, to not nickel and dime our students. If anybody's charged anything, it's all the other interlopers that are allowed to come in, so whether it's faculty, staff, or alumni, or whoever else we let come in. But I really think we can't, they've agreed to a fee. The worst thing I think we could do to our students is say, okay, now you're gonna have to charge this. First, they should get any pass and any charges. And then I think in terms of the revenue, that money has to go back into that facility. It can't go to some deep fund for the institution. We have to, make sure whatever we do generate, it's to improve that facility and the students benefit, maybe reducing their fees.
Yes, sir.
Why is the X at a 7?
The basic budget you guys get is so lean that you guys are forced to go into fees and stuff like that, because you don't have resources any other way.
Okay.
Operating expense management, we balance this. Basically, if all of a sudden the price of utilities soars, what do? Do you cut back operating hours? Do you not do this? Do you not do that? Or do you find another way to get it done? So the farther you go towards the O, the budget is the budget, you got to find a way to live within the budget. The more the X goes towards, the O goes towards the 10, you try to be really creative, and maybe the institution kicks more in to maintain a certain operating standard that's been set. We balanced it in the middle. Going too far that way is inappropriate. Going too far this way is also inappropriate. So, risk tolerance. I'm actually skip this one because we're having pretty intense conversations about this with the senior administration, so I'm gonna kind of move past this one. It'll be exactly right. And then sustainability is the last one. To what extent do you guys want to be green?
We've received some feedback. I know Dr. Beeler's received a proposal that we should try to make it solar, energy neutral with solar panels and stuff. So I think that there's probably a desire to be further to the right of the old. I just don't know, and I'm not gonna violate whether we can afford it, that concept. So I think there's a desire to be farther to the right. But then again, I'm not sure that I totally understand the LEED certification and gold and platinum rating. But I do think that from a sustainability perspective, we would like to be as far to the right as we can.
So you're more concerned about the actual practicality of how it operates, not so concerned about getting certified that you've done so.
Yeah.
How many people here care about the certification? Not too many. How many people care about being environmentally responsible? Okay. All right, so it's important that we put that in there because there's a lot on how we, at some point in time, we're going to be thinking about managing trash and all kinds of really pedestrian things. So we need to make sure that we do all that correctly. We are out of time. You guys were great. A group this size is not that easy. You guys were great. Thank you. Now we're going to package this up, and we're going to use this criteria for every decision that we make going forward. And hopefully we get it right for you. Thank you.
Thank you.